Jeff Jarrett, the chosen one. The self-anointed king of the mid-card who somehow convinced entire promotions to crown him world champion. And in the process, he racked up enemies like he was collecting guitars to smash. Now, this isn't about fans booing because the storyline said so. This is about wrestlers, promoters, and executives who genuinely couldn't stand the man. We're talking refusals to work with him, money disputes that ended careers, racial accusations, family grudges, and even creative allies turning into lifelong enemies. Jarrett was the guy who always seemed to be in the right place at the wrong time, with the wrong attitude. When wrestlers openly questioned his toughness, when promoters went on live TV to humiliate him, and when executives nearly wanted to fight, you're not hated for your heel act. You're hated because people are tired of your politics and your booking. So let's dive in. Here are some of the people who hated Jeff Jarrett, and why they'll never forgive him, no matter what excuses he tried throwing around backstage politics, because grudges in wrestling age worse than Jarrett's endless guitar-swinging entrances. Ahmed Johnson entered the WWE as a powerhouse with one of the most intimidating physiques of the 90s, and he wasn't here to make friends. But when he locked eyes with Jeff Jarrett backstage, things went nuclear. Johnson openly accused Jarrett of being racist and refusing to put others over, and according to multiple sources, the tension wasn't kayfabe, it was real-life venom. Johnson's beef with Jarrett started over a feud where Jarrett allegedly tried to control the narrative, manipulate outcomes, and protect his own spot at all costs. Johnson saw through it immediately. He refused to be the backdrop for Jarrett's ego, claiming that the guy made every match about himself and had a habit of undermining talent. Reports indicate Johnson would coldly glare at him during promos and matches, letting the heat simmer in the locker room like a kettle about to explode. The tension leaked to the audience too. Johnson's matches against Jarrett carried an undercurrent of distrust. When Johnson slammed Jarrett with a full-power clothesline, it felt like it could be a legitimate message instead of choreography. That intensity earned him respect from some colleagues, but Jarrett? He doubled down on backstage politics, which only fueled Johnson's hate. Johnson treated Jarrett like a human speed bump, ugly, loud, and impossible to ignore. By the time the feud ended, Johnson wasn't just frustrated, he was seething. Jarrett's reputation as a self-serving, controlling performer made him one of the few people in the 90s locker room that Johnson genuinely loathed. This wasn't storyline tension, this was pure backstage heat, personal and enduring. Shane McMahon's hatred for Jeff Jarrett didn't happen in a storyline, it happened in real life. In 1999, Jarrett allegedly demanded a six-figure payday before dropping the Intercontinental title to a top performer, forcing management to intervene. Shane saw this as a personal betrayal. Backstage whispers claim he nearly lost his temper physically. Jarrett's ego and obsession with controlling outcomes made him a lightning rod for tension, and Shane wasn't about to let it slide. Reports indicate Shane would confront Jarrett during hallways and production meetings, making it clear he knew every manipulative move. Jarrett's behavior, protecting his spot, refusing to put over younger talent, and bending booking decisions to his advantage, turned even allies into enemies overnight. The locker room became a minefield whenever Jarrett was present, and Shane made it obvious that his patience had limits. Jarrett's presence backstage was like a storm cloud. Every conversation, every scheduling decision, every minor oversight became a flashpoint. Shane reportedly would glare him down, making it obvious that he saw through every calculated move. Other staff and talent knew Shane's patience had limits, and Jarrett's repeated attempts to manipulate outcomes only deepened the animosity. Shane treated Jarrett like a glitching software program, impossible to trust, frustrating to deal with, and inevitably destined to crash. By the end of their professional overlap, it wasn't just irritation anymore, it was full-on contempt. The tension was entirely off-camera, purely backstage, and completely real. Anyone watching from the outside would never have guessed the amount of venom this one-sided hatred carried. Steve Austin's hatred for Jeff Jarrett was not scripted. It was entirely real. Austin openly refused to work with Jarrett at certain points in the WWE, citing his lack of physical credibility and manipulative behavior. Sources indicate that Austin viewed Jarrett as someone who constantly tried to control matches and protect himself at the expense of other performers. In Austin's eyes, that made Jarrett more dangerous backstage than in the ring. Backstage, the tension was palpable. Austin would reportedly glare at Jarrett during meetings and even casual conversations, making it clear he had no respect for his ego-driven antics. Other wrestlers noticed the friction. Jarrett's constant politicking and demands for preferential treatment made Austin question his reliability. The result was a standoff where nobody wanted to share a locker room with him, especially Austin. Jarrett's behavior didn't just annoy Austin, it created ripples throughout the locker room. Wrestlers felt forced to navigate around his backstage manipulations, while Austin would openly call him out for it. Jarrett's obsession with self-preservation and booking control made him a lightning rod for criticism, and Austin never held back. Austin treated Jarrett like a broken beer bottle, sharp, dangerous, and bound to leave a mark on anyone who got too close. By the time their paths crossed in any professional context, Jarrett wasn't just disliked, he was actively hated by one of the locker room's most feared figures. This wasn't storyline heat. It was real, personal, and enduring. A grudge that left a permanent backstage scar. Jeff Jarrett and the chairman's relationship was far from friendly. Sources confirm that backstage, Jarrett frequently pushed boundaries, trying to influence booking and secure preferential treatment. The chairman reportedly grew frustrated with Jarrett's constant politicking, seeing him as a persistent thorn in the side of management. Jarrett's self-interest clashed with the chairman's authority repeatedly. He was known to challenge decisions, complain about match placements, and maneuver for advantages, creating a tense atmosphere in the office. Management viewed him as someone who was never satisfied, always angling for personal gain. The chairman's disdain was reportedly rooted in this relentless ego and Jarrett's unwillingness to defer to company direction. Several backstage confrontations were reported, where Jarrett's actions directly tested the patience of management. He would argue over creative choices, sometimes in the presence of other talent, forcing the chairman to intervene. These incidents were not kayfabe. They were raw, personal clashes that highlighted Jarrett's reputation for stirring tension. Jarrett's maneuvering backstage earned him a label as difficult and untrustworthy. The chairman's reaction was consistent: minimize Jarrett's influence whenever possible, enforce boundaries, and keep a close eye on his activities. Even when Jarrett tried to smooth over conflicts, the animosity lingered, leaving a lasting impression on office culture. Jarrett had a way of making himself indispensable while simultaneously testing patience, a combination that left management exasperated. His political games ensured that backstage, he wasn't just disliked, he was actively resented. For anyone observing, the tension was tangible, and the grudges were real, making it clear that some people in power were never going to forgive him. Jeff Jarrett and Russo were friends, but that didn't make backstage politics any less brutal. If anything, it made it worse. Friends don't let friends take the easy route, and Jarrett loved making Russo's life complicated. Meetings that should have been about storylines often felt like an emotional roller coaster, with more eye rolls than actual plotting. Jarrett had a habit of helping with scripts. Russo would pitch an idea, Jarrett would tweak it, and suddenly the room was debating logic like philosophers on Red Bull. It wasn't personal, it was Jarrett being Jarrett. Russo once admitted that arguing with him felt like wrestling with a velvet-covered bear, soft on the outside, relentless on the inside. Even as friends, Jarrett could push buttons. Russo would suggest a storyline, Jarrett would push back, and everyone else was just holding popcorn. One source recalled Russo muttering, "If I wanted this much ego in my life, I'd adopt a peacock," after a particularly Jarrett-esque rewrite. It was playful torture, friendship edition. The beauty was that even when they fought, they respected each other's brains. Jarrett could steal the spotlight in a room full of writers, but Russo still laughed, rolled his eyes, and carried on. Their friendship survived the chaos because underneath all the ego and backstage maneuvers, they both loved wrestling, and they both knew exactly who could out-argue who. Jeff Jarrett and Russo didn't just clash, they turned friendly debates into legendary backstage stories. For Russo, every encounter was a reminder. Friendship with Jarrett meant never a dull moment, always a headache, and occasionally, a story worth telling. Even though Russo clashed with Jarrett's ego and booking politics, he never stopped respecting his friend. They fought, argued, and threw verbal punches, but Russo always acknowledged Jarrett's dedication, creativity, and influence in wrestling. Their friendship survived the heat, showing that hate and respect can coexist backstage. Jeff Jarrett leaves a trail of grudges like confetti at a chaotic office party. From furious tempers to flying fists, simmering resentment, and clashing egos, he collected enemies faster than a championship belt changes hands. Even friends turned wary in his orbit. He made egos clash, tempers flare, and backstage politics a spectator sport. Jarrett wasn't just hated, he was unavoidable, a human lightning rod for frustration, envy, and pure irritation. By the time he walked out of any arena, someone was plotting, muttering, or plotting mutters. If there's a lesson in all this hate, it's simple. Be like Jeff, but maybe skip the backstage chaos, or don't, because nothing makes wrestling more entertaining than someone collecting grudges like trophies. Don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe. Don't forget, if you ever think your job is stressful, remember, Jeff Jarrett made dozens of legends genuinely loathe him, and somehow survived it all. Thanks for watching.